This is your host, Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at OpenSource Summit in Dublin. And today we have with us Melanie Cutlan, Managing Director at Accenture. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me here.
What has been your experience so far at this event? Because if I'm not wrong, after a very long time, we are doing these events again. So talk about it.
It is fantastic to see the community coming together again across the entire Linux Foundation, as well as I was here for the Hyperledger Member Summit and the Hyperledger Global Forum, where it was just great to see and engage with the new projects, where things have gotten in the last few years since we've been doing these updates remotely, and have those connections and social, as well as kind of new business and ideas forming every day.
Your involvement with not only open source, but also the Linux Foundation. Talk a bit about the history.
Yeah, so Accenture is a strong supporter of the Linux Foundation across the board. We're on a number of different committees and such, and different foundations. So personally, I have a role on the Hyperledger board as well. So we're pushing or supporting in the growth of standards and accelerators and projects in the blockchain space. I've been in the blockchain space since 2015. And it's exciting to see how the community has come together to, rethink the future of money, identity, supply chains. There's interoperability, assets, and accelerators every day in use. And this year, what was interesting is it moved from projects and pilots and POCs to people really talking about value and what's happened in the market and how we're really maturing as an industry.
We are kind of living in a world which is very data-centric, data sensitive as well. So can you talk about the role that you see of blockchain technologies in today's world? Because it goes beyond just, transaction, it can play a very important role in a lot of different areas where you do want to ensure that, either the data has not been tampered with or there is a chain there. So talk about that.
It's interesting. The model is getting flipped on its head to where you can actually own your own data and consent to share it with another, and for how long and which pieces and parts of the data. And so in that model paradigm shift, we're stopping from whoever amasses the most amount of data as a company wins about their users, and then has, all kinds of constraints around what they do and don't use with your data. In this model, we can start to engage with, I only want to share this piece of information with you, for what and for how long. We're seeing the rise of digital credentials move from early ideas to really showing your identity, and where you can, bring your identity to an equation. I don't need to tell you my address to tell you I'm over 21. So I can share pieces and parts of that information, but then that also bleeds into access to information and verification of my education or my certifications, and how I can share that across a network. And so really across a multi-party system where you have the need to share value, we exchange money, identity, and objects all day long. And it's really the tokenization of everything. And we've seen the rise of the tokenization. We've even seen it move into the consumer side, right, where consumers have said tokenization is helpful, because once I have ownership of something and it's provable, I can then resell it to you, and you can now feel confident that you have that identity, object, money, credential, and share those along the way. So the explosion of this is actually turning into a convergence that will power the form and function of the metaverse going forward, which is quite an exciting opportunity.
Can you give some examples where, blockchain technologies are playing a very critical role in our day-to-day life without us realizing them?
Track and trace and provenance of information around supply chains. You talked about, the last few years have been interesting. There's been a need more than ever before for organizations to collaborate together across an entire supply chain. So identifying where is a product and goods in the process, the provenance of the goods, starting to understand what farmer was, actually a part of this entire ecosystem, so you can prove to your customers that these are organic goods or raised sustainably and things. And so there's a huge area around that. Financial services continues to lean in. There are opportunities to remove the inefficiencies in today's reconciliation processes of, my data is wrong, let's compare notes, why is it right or wrong? And so across financial services, there's a very large amount of use cases. And we really see them across every industry and every function, especially as you get into some of these, credentialing types of use cases that are cross industry.
What kind of market or ecosystem you're seeing which is growing around blockchain technologies?
The ecosystem is significant. There's so much innovation happening every day. And I think what's really unique about how the open source movement and the Linux Foundation helps to organize and orchestrate some of this. Hyperledger is really the place to come to work together on projects. There's a bit of a there's a theory that there won't be one blockchain to win all blockchains, right? The many will exist, and so how do we work together in ecosystems? Because I'm participating in this value chain, in this transaction, a different value chain there. And what the Hyperledger Foundation has done is helped to spur innovation where people from unrelated topics come together and create utilities of value to really accelerate the industry going forward, that allows people to connect, provide interoperability, provide DevOps, a lot of the core functions that allow you to make your use case successful and integrate with others.
There was an announcement of Open Wallet. There was
Yes.
an announcement of Linux Foundation Europe. Accenture, is participating in some of these foundations. So first, once again, talk about the work you're doing with some of these new, bodies, and what role do you see they will be playing, going forward?
The announcement with Open Wallet is amazing. To look at the list of, I listened to the panel the other day of the list of people participating in Open Wallet. We will be significant contributors in this space. That brings together standards bodies, governments, technology providers, as well as service providers, as well as all the major, most of the major payments companies out there. It really brings this idea that to create a digital wallet that carries your money, identity, and objects across the board and is portable, right? So that you can actually have a useful wallet. We have one wallet in our hands today, and as we move, and this is really the convergence we see of the virtual places that we're trying to transact with, whether they're 3D or 2D. You need to be able to have something that's verifiable. As I share with you a digital object, that money changes hands at the same moment as the object changes hands and ownership. And so having this set of standards and convening bodies that will create some assets that will drive an open wallet infrastructure will change the game and really make the next generation of the internet much more useful than the fragmentation we see today across all of these networks, right? You can go from a gaming platform to an immersive platform to an individual website, and none of that has consistency and portability, right? You buy that digital Nike shoes for a game, and wouldn't it be great if you could take them to another scenario? And that's just a simple thing, not to mention some of these utility value tokens that are existing everywhere.
Let's just stick to Open Wallet. What will be the role of either blockchain technologies or, because when we look at, because it's very new, so we're still trying to learn more about it. You folks know more about it in the background, but what kind of collaboration do you see between, is there any overlap there that you see or collaboration there?
We've been working on the industry's been working on verifiable credentials on a blockchain, right? So this idea that you can have verified attestations attached to a chain that you can go back and check against pieces of data, and that then this is the idea of becoming a container of multiple credentials, right? Right today, they are one purpose of I either have an identity credential or I have this credential, and they just build more chains. The idea of a wallet is starting to create a convening organization that you can say my money, identity, and objects and credentials sit in one place, and I can then use them appropriately. So there are rules to be created, there are guidelines, there are rails to be created, there's technology to be built, and then there's change and policy, right, that needs to go. And so I think what's amazing about the people who are leaning in immediately, there's big players in this space that are, I think, gonna have the right, really, they've had enough years of research and innovation that it is time to come together and say, let's make this happen in a reality in the open wallet. I heard a bias towards action, not a bias towards talk in all of the early discussions. And I know it's just early forming, and it's already clear that this is a commitment to the industry that we got to get this right, or we're gonna, make it, it has to be a lovable experience. And adoption has been a problem of verifiable credentials because we haven't really focused on how do we make this a lovable, easy consumer experience that they can use every day, that enterprises can easily integrate with, and not every enterprise who wants a credential has to build their own infrastructure. So moving the industry together, I think, is like this, it couldn't be better under the Linux Foundation umbrella to really drive something this significant forward. The
second part of the question is also that potential collaboration between Hyperledger project and this cross-pollination or...
Absolutely. There's a number of Hyperledger projects that are working on pieces and parts of this, of the infrastructure and the use case. And I think that's what the convening body needs to do, is set the set of requirements, set the roadmap, decide which projects are going to be a part of the overall stack. And there's absolutely a role for blockchain in that, and the Hyperledger Foundation will be working closely with them.
I want to talk about the Europe, but I also want to talk about Metaverse quickly before that, because Metaverse, we talk a lot about it. Most of the discussion comes from Meta. And there's a lot of confusion. People sometimes compare it with the Second Life. They compare it with the VR. If I ask you, from either it could be enterprise perspective or consumer's perspective, how would you define Metaverse?
It's been an explosion of capabilities in the market. The headsets have advanced, bandwidth has advanced, and all these features and functions are continuing to advance. It makes the Metaverse kind of having its moment, right? It's definitely early days in its features and functions and reach, but we rolled out at Accenture an enterprise actually onboarding experience. So we purchased 60,000 headsets. Over 100,000 people have been through an onboarding experience in what we call One Accenture Park. And so we've done this at scale. And what we found is that employees need to collaborate together. You mentioned in the beginning, right, we hadn't been together because many of these employees onboarded during COVID and had never been in an office. And so got a chance to meet and communicate, have that spatial audio where you and I can chat while somebody's presenting without disrupting the whole room. And network in new ways as a global organization. And it just becomes, as I watch people go through the experiences, I bring clients in and say, hey, this is what we're doing. What do you think you could do it with? Immediately people have moments of, I'd like to do it here. This is the future of collaboration. This is going to change the way we put people in offices. If we can bring that togetherness, our society is connected. Right? And we need to stay connected and feel connected to be able to bring our best value. And so that's just one enterprise use cases. They span across financial services, across retail, luxury goods, supply chains, anywhere you need to collaborate. But then it's also bringing that form and function, right? So if I can bring my digital wallet to One Accenture Park and I can buy the t-shirt that says I was there and then share it somewhere else, then I can actually bring my goods and the portability along the way. And so really to us, it's that Internet of Place. Like, where are these places we're going to go and visit? And they're all independent and segmented today, and it's starting to come together. But also that Internet of ownership, of how do I take that ownership? It's driving a new community model. So I can buy a token of something. I'm now incented to make the token worth more. And so consumers are really engaging in this new mental model. And when you start to take this tokenization of everything in a virtual place, you have just a beautiful mix of capabilities.
This camera can be either stupid or dumb, I don't know, but we are trying to, I have always worked from home remotely. So I love that because I always felt that industrial revolution, they kind of broke families apart because you have to leave, moms have to leave their kids. And then in Europe it's better. I used to live in Europe, but in the US, there's, depending on the company, there's no maternity leave. You have to leave your kid with the daycare. So with Metaverse, what I do see is that it might start bringing the families together because, if the problem with working remotely is a lot of industries Linux kernel has always been a remote, folks sitting in their room and fixing things. But a lot of places you do have to bring folks together. And, when people sit together, the collaboration or the creativity is different versus everybody working at their time. So do you also think that it might also help with the hybrid workforce model, which may be too much far-fetched at this point, but it might enable that so that companies can maintain the balance between yes, you can live in a big ranch in Texas and still work for a company in Florida.
I get to live in the mountains of Colorado, which is pretty fantastic. And I have joined Women in Technology as a keynote speaker in Asia on multiple occasions through this forum. And they don't know where I'm coming from, so they feel like I'm there. I'm not just the Zoom screen and they're all in the room. We were all together, right, in this immersive place that allows us to kind of bring that connectivity, and the prep I do with the other panelists and speakers actually feels like I know them now, right? And so immersive experiences actually fit in your brain differently than when you're watching something on TV, right? As if you experienced something. And so there's science behind the idea that you're learning differently, you're experiencing differently, and you remember it in a different category of your brain. And so, you and I will always remember we've met each other here, and if we met each other in a virtual place, it's that same sense versus I saw you on TV one day or watched it on YouTube, right?
You talked about the women diversity inclusion in Metaverse. We saw some cases where it was, so how is it also kind of within your kind of concern or allowed to make Metaverse a safe place also, because folks can be themselves when they are in a virtual world, it's not a physical world. So is that your concern yet or not?
So we actually launched a responsible metaverse team with the immediate launch of our business group of this needs to be responsible by design. Safety, security, moderation of spaces needs to be rethought and reimagined of how do we moderate spaces in these virtual worlds. How do we create, right, share the right IP in these environments so that you are really catching the desire to share and exchange, and also then the technology needs to be consistent and governed well, right? Some of these are more governed networks than less governed networks out there today, and so really we have a commitment to do this. Like there were things that we look back at Web 2 that we wish would have been in place. And this is our moment, right? As an industry to say, how do we think this next immersive internet and the future of kind of digital experiences is going to be? And what kind of standards and roles do we want to set across the board so that we can engage more safely and securely and bring value to the forefront along the way?
So you mentioned Web 2, we talk about Web 3 now. Mm-hmm. Also, we're talking about 5G private networks. Yeah. So how do you see these technologies will also kind of enable Metaverse?
There's definitely an explosion of convergences of these technologies that have been, emerging technologies that are coming together to create value. And there's a moment in time where if each of them stay on their own track, you might miss a moment, right? And a trick to pull them together. As we bring multiple headsets into a demo room at any point in time, they consume so much Wi-Fi, we have to bring in new tools, right? And so that's a perfect opportunity aligned with, the increases in bandwidth across the board. At home, in the office, you put, a lot of high fidelity devices together. And we're seeing they're 2D and 3D experiences. So there's many of these experiences, we're experiencing them on a typical laptop, but now the laptop needs to be upgraded. The developer laptops run better than the regular standard issue, and the amount of internet and bandwidth and such. So it's really, as you get a more immersive experience, you're using more cloud compute, you're using more bandwidth, you're using more even local compute and such. So it's a convergence of everything and bringing to the next generation of things.
I also want to talk about open source in Metaverse, because we still see a lot of companies, they are doing a lot of work, but most of it is proprietary in some cases. So how do you see, because open source, it enables innovation, you don't have to worry about R&D, you can actually focus on what you really experience you want to bring to the user. If you have 5 developers, all 5 developers are working on plumbing, which you can take from open source. So how much are you seeing the adoption of open source, or do you want to see more?
I definitely want to see more. I always want to see more open source, right? Why wouldn't we? But we're launching even internally a community of practice around all of the capabilities, right? From the experience layer down to the data layer to the infrastructure layer and such, so that we can encourage that development of assets and accelerators that make the products more helpful. As a services company, right, we're out there finding ideas and opportunities with clients, but then instigating the markets so that we have real valuable solutions along the way that package these stacks together. And so it's really that only place you can come together in a developer community and say, here's the gaps in what we see. Like, clients are asking for these things. And so I think the open source community is a perfect place to just bring that together and say, there's a lot of great tech here, but here's what we need to be able to do so that these things can work together. And just having an independent objective, right? Versus one company has, pieces and parts in the stack, but having that independent objective and the real organizing factors, right, are these foundations that pull together kind of those common needs.
Melanie, thank you so much for taking time out today. And first of all, thank you for sharing Accenture's involvement in the open source. As I said, this is the first time I'm talking. I would love to have you folks on the show so that we can talk more about what work you folks are doing, not only in the open source space, but we talked about Metaverse, there are so many things to talk about. So let's make sure that this is not going to the only interview that we have done together. Let's do again. But I really appreciate your time and your insights into a lot of different things. So once again, thank you. Maybe we will do this interview in a Metaverse, right?
That would be a fantastic spot for it. Thank you so much for having me and the great discussion.